My name is Mason Parker, and at 34, I never expected to be seated in the kitchen at my own brother's wedding. Yet there I was, the CEO of Atlas Technologies, eating prime rib next to dishwashers and busboys while Logan celebrated with real guests. The moment I made that call canceling our $30 million contract still plays in my mind. Success builds empires but doesn't shield you from family pain. Before I tell you how I went from kitchen table to canceling millions, let me know where you're watching from and hit that like and subscribe button if family has ever underestimated your worth. Growing up as the younger brother to Logan Parker was like living in perpetual shadow. From the moment he could throw a football, my parents decided he was their golden child. 3 years older, Logan was everything my parents valued: athletic, charismatic, and popular. Our childhood home in suburban Chicago displayed dozens of Logan's trophies. While my academic achievements merited a casual, good job at most, my father, Richard Parker, built Parker Construction from nothing into a respectable local business. He worked with calloused hands and unwavering determination, qualities he saw reflected in Logan but somehow missed in me. From age 12, Logan spent summers at construction sites, learning the family business. I preferred computers, staying inside during those hot Illinois summers, teaching myself coding languages while my family shook their heads. Computers won't build anything real, my father would say. Logan's learning a trade that'll feed his family someday. My mother, Carol, was gentler but no less dismissive of my interests. It's nice you enjoy your little computer games, honey, she'd say after I'd spent weeks developing my first basic program. Meanwhile, she'd drive hours to attend Logan's every football game, cheering from the stands like his personal cheerleader. High school crystallized our different paths. Logan was quarterback, prom king, and the guy everyone wanted to know. I was the quiet kid in advanced placement classes who started a computer club that only 3 other students joined. When Logan graduated with average grades and a football scholarship to the state university, my parents threw a massive backyard party. When I graduated valedictorian with a full scholarship to MIT, we had dinner at Applebee's. Don't be upset, my mother said when I mentioned the disparity. You know Logan needs more encouragement. Things come easily to you. College separated us physically but didn't change the family dynamic. Logan stayed close to home, attending classes half-heartedly while working increasingly important roles at Parker Construction. I thrived at MIT, surrounded by people who actually valued intellect and innovation. For the first time, I felt seen. I developed friendships with fellow tech enthusiasts who understood my passion and recognized my talent. During those years, I came home less frequently. Each visit reinforced that nothing had changed. Sunday dinners featured endless discussions about Parker Construction's projects, with my father grooming Logan to eventually take over. When I tried discussing my studies in software development and business management, eyes glazed over. That's nice, Mason, my father would say before turning back to Logan. Now about the Johnson project. The summer before my senior year, I interned at a tech startup in Boston. I developed an inventory management system that the company eventually purchased for $50. My first real success. When I called home to share the news, my mother answered. That's wonderful, honey, she said distractedly. Oh, did Logan tell you? Parker Construction landed the Westfield Mall renovation. Your father's so proud. After graduating with honors, I faced rejection after rejection in the brutal post-recession job market. I moved into a tiny apartment with 2 roommates, and took consulting gigs while developing my own ideas at night. During one particularly difficult month when I could barely make rent, I called my father for advice. Business is tough these days, he said. Logan's really stepping up at the company though. Maybe construction's in your blood too? We could always use an office manager. I declined the offer, unwilling to accept a pity position beneath my brother. Instead, I doubled down on my own path. working 18-hour days developing what would eventually become Atlas Technologies' flagship product. My family interpreted my struggle as failure, never recognizing it as necessary foundation building. When Logan became engaged to Sophia Winters during this period, my mother called specially to make sure I knew. She comes from money, Mason. Her father owns half the commercial real estate in their county. Logan's really moving up in the world. The implication was clear. While I struggled, Logan continued to succeed. What they couldn't see was that my apparent failure was actually the incubation period for something much bigger than they could imagine. The birth of Atlas Technologies happened in the most unglamorous setting possible, my apartment's converted walk-in closet. After months of rejections from established tech companies, I decided to build something of my own. Using my savings and maxing out 2 credit cards, I developed construction management software that addressed inefficiencies I'd observed during my childhood visits to my father's work sites. The irony wasn't lost on me. Despite my father's dismissal of my computer games, I was creating technology that could revolutionize the very industry he dedicated his life to. My first-hand knowledge of construction workflows gave me unique insight that pure tech developers lacked. My first pitch to potential investors was a disaster. 10 minutes into my presentation, the lead investor stopped me. "Kid, construction guys don't use fancy software. They use paper and Excel, if anything. Go find another industry." I heard similar rejections 15 more times over the next 3 months. With funds dwindling and my roommates growing tired of my ramen noodle diet and late-night coding sessions, desperation set in. Then came the moment that changed everything. A former MIT classmate introduced me to Samuel Hayes, a venture capitalist whose father had owned a plumbing company. Unlike other investors, Hayes immediately understood the problem my software solved. "Construction has been technology resistant for too long," he said after my pitch. "This could change everything." Hayes invested $500,000 for a 15% stake in Atlas Technologies. With actual capital behind me, I hired 2 developers and moved operations to a small office space. We spent 18 months refining the product, testing it with small construction companies willing to try something new in exchange for steep discounts. During this period, I rarely spoke with my family. When I did call home, the conversations remained focused on Logan's achievements at Parker Construction. My parents never asked detailed questions about my business, seemingly assuming it was some small-time operation that would eventually fail. Atlas's first major client came through a connection I'd never expected. At an industry conference where we'd scraped together enough money for the smallest possible booth, the CTO of Richardson Builders, one of the largest construction companies in the Midwest, stopped by. "My son's been telling me we need to modernize," he said, examining our demo. "This looks promising." That initial contract was worth $75,000 more money than I'd ever seen. Within 6 months, Richardson's efficiency improved so dramatically that word spread throughout the industry. By the end of our second year, Atlas had contracts with 5 major construction firms and revenue approaching $3 million. Despite this growth, I remained relatively modest when discussing my company with family. During occasional phone calls, I'd mention, "Business is going well," without specifics. I was also waiting for them to show genuine interest by asking questions. They rarely did. The real breakthrough for Atlas came in our 3rd year. We developed a secondary product that integrated with our main platform, a supply chain management system that prevented costly construction delays. This innovation caught the attention of industry publications, and suddenly Atlas Technologies was being hailed as a disruptor in construction technology. When a prominent business magazine included me in their 30 Under 30 feature, I finally sent something home, a framed copy of the article. My mother called the next day. "We saw your magazine thing, Mason. Very nice," she said. "Did Logan tell you Parker Construction is building the new community center? Your father's so proud." By our 4th year, Atlas had grown to 65 employees with offices in Chicago and Boston. Our annual revenue exceeded $20 million, and we were expanding internationally. Meanwhile, Logan had officially taken over Parker Construction after our father's semi-retirement. From what little information filtered through family conversations, I gathered the company was struggling to compete with larger firms. It was during this period that I first met Sophia Winters, Logan's fiancée, at a family Thanksgiving. Tall, blonde, and impeccably dressed, she assessed me with a quick up-and-down glance. "Logan mentioned you do something with computers," she said dismissively before turning to engage my father in conversation about golf. Later that evening, I overheard her talking to her mother on the phone. No, the brother's not much. Some small tech business, I think. Nothing like Logan's company. I left early the next morning, declining my mother's invitation to stay for the weekend. On the flight back to Boston, I contemplated the peculiar reality that despite Atlas now being worth more than Parker Construction had ever been, my family still viewed me as the less successful brother. As Atlas continued growing, we increasingly competed against innovation initiatives from major construction conglomerates. One proposal particularly caught my attention: a $30 million government contract to modernize infrastructure management systems across multiple states. This was the kind of landmark project that could cement Atlas's position as an industry leader. What made the situation complicated was learning that Parker Construction had bid on a portion of the same contract as part of a consortium of smaller companies. They didn't have the technology capabilities required, but were hoping to secure the physical construction aspects of the project. The realization that my company and my brothers were now competing in the same arena created a strange new dynamic. For the first time, our paths were converging again, but now with me in the position of strength. The wedding invitation arrived during a board meeting. My assistant slipped it onto the conference table beside me. The heavy cream envelope embossed with gold lettering. "Logan Richard Parker and Sophia Elizabeth Winters request the honor of your presence." I tucked it into my jacket pocket, continuing the meeting without reaction. Later that evening in my downtown apartment, I examined the invitation more carefully. It had been nearly 6 months since I'd seen any family members. My last visit being a brief appearance at Christmas where Logan had proudly shown off Sophia's engagement ring. 7 carats, he'd announced to everyone at dinner. Only the best for my future wife. I'd caught Sophia's smug glance in my direction, as if challenging me to top that display of affluence. I hadn't bothered to mention the technology award Atlas had received that month, or the 8-figure acquisition offer we'd declined. Now, looking at the invitation to their undoubtedly extravagant wedding, I felt a familiar mixture of obligation and hope. Despite our complicated relationship, Logan was still my brother. Perhaps this important life event could mark a turning point for us. Family relationships evolve, I reasoned. We weren't kids anymore. I RSVP'd for one, declining the +1 option despite currently dating Rachel, a brilliant software engineer I'd met at a technology conference. Our relationship was still new, and subjecting her to the peculiar dynamics of my family seemed unfair. Besides, attending alone would allow me to focus on reconnecting with Logan without distractions. The question of a wedding gift proved challenging. What do you buy for a brother who's always measured his worth in material terms? After considerable thought, I selected a rare vintage watch I knew Logan had admired years ago, a Patek Philippe that cost nearly $30,000. The price didn't matter to me anymore, but I knew it would communicate something to Logan that I couldn't express in words. As the wedding date approached, business developments at Atlas created an interesting coincidence. We were in final negotiations for the government infrastructure contract, and our intelligence suggested we were the frontrunners. If secured, this contract would include subcontracting opportunities that could potentially benefit smaller construction companies like Parker Construction. I found myself contemplating whether to help Logan's struggling business through Atlas connections. It would be simple enough to direct some of the subcontracting work to Parker Construction if we won the bid. The company would need to qualify, of course, but I could ensure they received fair consideration. This possibility added another dimension to my anticipation of the wedding. Perhaps I could use this professional opportunity to finally bridge the personal gap between us. The thought of being able to help my brother's company not from charity but through legitimate business partnership appealed to me. It would be a relationship of equals, finally. 2 weeks before the wedding, I attempted to reach Logan by phone, hoping to grab lunch during my upcoming trip to Chicago. His responses were brief and distracted. "Really slammed with work and wedding stuff, Mason. Let's just see you at the rehearsal dinner, okay?" I told myself not to take it personally. Wedding planning was stressful, and Logan had always been bad at maintaining connections. Still, I found myself spending an inordinate amount of time selecting the perfect suit for the occasion, eventually choosing a custom Tom Ford that my stylist assured me struck the right balance between impressive and appropriate. The night before flying to Chicago, I received a confidential update from our legal team. Atlas had all but secured the government contract. Barring any unforeseen complications, we would be announced as the primary contractor within 2 weeks. The timing seemed perfect. I could subtly mention this opportunity to Logan at the wedding, offering a professional olive branch alongside my personal hopes for reconciliation. As my private flight descended into Chicago, I felt genuinely optimistic for the first time in years about reconnecting with my family. I'd built something substantial on my own terms. I no longer needed their validation, which paradoxically made me more open to rebuilding relationships. Success had given me the security to be generous both financially and emotionally. The rehearsal dinner that evening would be my first encounter with the entire wedding party. As I dressed in my hotel suite, I reminded myself to focus on Logan's happiness rather than any lingering family dynamics. This weekend wasn't about me or our complicated history. It was about supporting my brother on his important day, regardless of the past. The Lake Forest estate hosting Logan and Sophia's wedding belonged to her parents and sprawled across 10 manicured acres overlooking Lake Michigan. A wrought iron gate opened to a circular driveway where luxury vehicles deposited guests before valets whisked them away. I opted to drive myself, pulling my rented Audi behind a Bentley, disgorging what appeared to be friends of the bride. The main house, more accurately described as a mansion, featured stone columns and massive windows reflecting the afternoon sun. Staff directed guests toward an elaborately decorated garden where the ceremony would take place. White chairs arranged in perfect rows faced a floral arch that must have cost more than some people's entire weddings. "Mason? Mason Parker, is that you?" I turned to see my Aunt Patricia approaching, arms outstretched for a hug. My father's sister had always been kind to me, though we rarely spoke these days. "Look at you. All grown up and handsome in that suit. How long has it been? 4 years? Something like that." I smiled, accepting her embrace. "How have you been, Aunt Patty?" "Oh, you know. The usual retirement complaints. But never mind me, your mother mentioned you're doing well with your computer business. Some kind of software thing?" This was typical of family gatherings, vague awareness of my career without any real understanding. Before I could respond, Uncle Robert joined us. "Mason, heard you're living in Boston now. Still with that startup? Atlas Technologies?" I nodded. "Yes, we're doing well." "Good for you, son. Always nice to have something to fall back on if you ever want to come back to Chicago." He patted my shoulder encouragingly, clearly having no idea that falling back on Atlas would be like Warren Buffett falling back on Berkshire Hathaway. I scanned the gathering for Logan, eventually spotting him surrounded by a group of well-dressed men who appeared to be Sophia's relatives. When he noticed me, he raised a hand in acknowledgement but made no move to approach. "I see Daddy waving. If you'll excuse me." As she glided away, I overheard her whisper to a bridesmaid, "That's the brother I mentioned. The one who couldn't cut it in the family business, so he moved away." I took another sip of scotch, reminding myself why I had come. This wasn't about Sophia or her misconceptions. It was about supporting Logan and possibly rebuilding our relationship. The crowd shifted toward the ceremony area, and I found myself seated in the fifth row alongside distant cousins who asked polite questions about Boston weather. Throughout the admittedly beautiful ceremony, I watched my brother commit himself to Sophia, wondering if he was truly happy or simply achieving what he thought would impress others. When they exchanged vows, I caught a glimpse of genuine emotion on Logan's face, a rare moment of vulnerability that reminded me of the brother I'd known before competition and comparison complicated our relationship. For that brief moment, I felt a renewed hope that reconnection might be possible. After the ceremony, guests were directed toward the reception in a massive tent constructed on the property's lower lawn. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, tables adorned with elaborate floral centerpieces, and a 12-piece band played from a raised platform. No expense had been spared. I approached the table assignments, searching for my name among the calligraphed cards. After several minutes of confusion, I couldn't locate it anywhere. "Excuse me," I asked a harried-looking wedding planner clutching a tablet. "I can't seem to find my seating assignment." Mason Parker, brother of the groom. She scrolled through her tablet, expression shifting to discomfort. "Mr. Parker, let me double-check with the bride's mother. There may have been a last-minute change." She disappeared for several minutes before returning with an even more uncomfortable expression. "Mr. Parker, if you could follow me, please." Rather than leading me to one of the elegantly decorated tables within the main tent, she guided me through a side entrance and down a corridor toward what was clearly the catering area. Inside the large industrial kitchen, busy staff prepared dinner service while a small table had been set up in the corner, a single-place setting with my name card. "There must be some mistake," I said, staring at the lonely table. The wedding planner's discomfort was palpable. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Parker." The final seating arrangements were approved by the bride. Perhaps there was a miscommunication. I stood frozen, processing the deliberate humiliation. This wasn't an oversight or mistake. This was intentional. "I'll speak with my brother," I said quietly. I found Logan near the head table, laughing with his groomsmen. When he saw my expression, his smile faltered. "What's up, Mason? Can I speak with you privately for a moment?" He reluctantly stepped away from his friends, following me to a quieter corner. "There seems to be a problem with my seating arrangement," I said evenly. "Apparently I've been placed in the kitchen." Logan had the decency to look embarrassed, but not surprised. "Look, Sophia had to make some tough decisions with the seating. We have a lot of important guests here, her family, business connections." "Important guests," I repeated. "And the brother of the groom doesn't qualify." He ran a hand through his hair. "Mason, don't make this a thing, okay? It's just dinner. Did you know about this arrangement?" His silence was answer enough. Before he could respond further, Sophia appeared at his side, champagne flute in hand. "Is there a problem?" she asked, eyes darting between us. "Just a misunderstanding about seating," Logan replied quickly. Sophia's perfectly made-up face hardened slightly. "There's no misunderstanding. We had limited space for the main reception area." "In a tent that could hold 300 people?" I questioned. Her eyes narrowed. "We had to prioritize. Daddy's business associates and our family friends needed proper seating. The help eats in the kitchen, and since you're not really part of our social circle." The calculated cruelty left me momentarily speechless. Logan stood beside her, offering no defense on my behalf. "It's just easier this way, Mason," he finally said. "Please don't create a scene." In that moment, everything crystallized. Despite all my success, despite building a multi-million-dollar company through my own efforts, in their eyes I remained less than. Not because of any actual failure, but because acknowledging my success would require them to reconsider their entire narrative. "Congratulations on your wedding," I said quietly. I hope you'll both be very happy. I turned and walked back toward the kitchen, aware of curious glances from nearby guests who had overheard portions of our exchange. Inside, the catering staff worked efficiently, occasionally casting sympathetic glances toward my isolated table. A young server approached hesitantly. Sir, would you like some wine with your meal? I can bring you the good bottles they're serving guests out front. Her kindness nearly undid me. Thank you. That would be nice. As I sat at my small table, surrounded by the clattering of dishes and staff hurrying to serve the important guests, my phone began vibrating in my pocket. The caller ID showed it was Rebecca Chin, Atlas's chief operating officer. Given our pending contract announcement, I knew I should answer despite the circumstances. Rebecca, what's up? Mason, great news. The government contract is officially ours. $30 million for the initial phase with renewal options that could triple that amount. Legal just got confirmation. As she continued detailing the contract specifics, my eyes drifted to the kitchen doorway where I could see into the main reception. Logan and Sophia were making their grand entrance as husband and wife, guests applauding enthusiastically. My brother looked genuinely happy, while Sophia wore the satisfied expression of someone who had acquired exactly what she wanted. In that moment, the path forward became suddenly, painfully clear. Rebecca, hold on. I interrupted my COO mid-sentence. The subcontracting opportunities we discussed for the Midwest region, has anything been finalized yet? No, we're still evaluating candidates. The construction portions need to be allocated within the next 2 weeks. Why? I watched through the doorway as Logan and Sophia took their seats at the elaborate head table, surrounded by important guests who deserved to be in the main reception. Parker Construction was on our consideration list, correct? Yes, Rebecca confirmed. Your brother's company. They're smaller than our usual partners, but you had mentioned giving them consideration. The decision crystallized with sudden clarity. For years I had diminished myself around my family, downplaying my success to avoid rocking the family dynamic. I had come to this wedding hoping to rebuild bridges, even planning to help Logan's company through Atlas connections. And their response was to seat me in the kitchen, away from the real guests. Remove them from consideration, I said quietly, and prepare alternate options for the Midwest construction portions. Are you sure? I thought you wanted to. I'm sure. A new resolve strengthened my voice. In fact, I need you to do something else. Prepare to announce our contract win immediately rather than waiting for the planned press release next week. That's unusual timing, Rebecca said cautiously. Any particular reason? Just a change of plans. I'll explain later. I ended the call and sat silently for several minutes, picking at the plate a sympathetic server had brought me. The same meal being served to guests in the main reception, she had assured me. How considerate. Through the kitchen doorway, I could see the reception in full swing. Champagne flowed. The band played, and guests mingled among tables. The father of the bride was now standing, beginning what appeared to be a toast. Charles Winters, the real estate developer Logan had been so eager for me to meet, was holding court before the assembled important people. I stood up, straightened my Tom Ford suit, and walked deliberately from the kitchen into the main reception area. Conversations paused as I entered, a few curious glances following my progress. I moved directly toward the head table where Logan, seeing my approach, shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Charles Winters was mid-toast when I reached the table. And we couldn't be prouder to welcome Logan into our family. His construction company shows tremendous promise, and with the right connections. Excuse the interruption, I said, loud enough to be heard by nearby tables. I removed my phone from my pocket and dialed Rebecca's number, placing the call on speaker. Logan's expression shifted from annoyance to confusion. Rebecca, it's Mason. I'm with my family now and wanted to confirm our decision about the government contract subcontractors. Her voice came clearly through the speaker. Confirmed. Parker Construction has been removed from consideration for the $30 million infrastructure project. We'll announce Atlas Technologies as the primary contractor tomorrow and begin vetting alternate construction partners immediately. The color drained from Logan's face as surrounding conversations quieted. Even Charles Winters paused his toast, attention caught by the mention of a $30 million contract. Thank you, Rebecca. Please proceed with the announcement as discussed. I ended the call and met my brother's stunned gaze. Congratulations again on your wedding, Logan. Sophia. I nodded to each of them. I'm afraid I need to cut my celebration short. Business calls. Sophia, who had been whispering frantically to Logan, looked up sharply. Atlas Technologies? Your company is Atlas Technologies? Charles Winters stepped forward, champagne glass still in hand. Did I hear correctly? Atlas Technologies? The construction software company that just won the multi-state infrastructure contract? That's correct, I replied evenly. You're Mason Parker, the founder? I tried to arrange a meeting with your company last month. The irony wasn't lost on me. The father of the bride who had deemed me unworthy of sitting with wedding guests had been unsuccessfully trying to connect with me professionally. Logan stood abruptly. Mason. Can we speak privately? I don't think that's necessary, I replied. I believe your wife made the situation perfectly clear when she explained that the help eats in the kitchen. Sophia's face flushed crimson as nearby guests exchanged uncomfortable glances. You misunderstood, she attempted, her practiced poise cracking. We simply have limited seating in a tent designed for 300 people? I echoed her earlier question. No, I understood perfectly. Enjoy your reception. As I turned to leave, Logan caught my arm. You're pulling our contract because of a seating arrangement? That's beyond petty, Mason. I met his gaze directly. No, Logan. I'm making a business decision not to work with people who've demonstrated poor judgment and questionable character. The seating arrangement just made the decision easier. Charles Winters was now fully engaged in the unfolding drama. Logan, you never mentioned your brother owned Atlas Technologies. I thought you said he had some small tech startup? The layers of misrepresentation were peeling away in real time. I could see guests at nearby tables whispering, connecting dots and revising assumptions. It's not what you think, Logan was saying to his new father-in-law. Mason and I can work this out. I disengaged from his grip and stepped back. There's nothing to work out. I came here hoping to reconnect with my brother, even planning to help your company through a legitimate business partnership. Instead, I found exactly what I've always found in this family: conditional acceptance based on a fundamental misunderstanding of who I am and what I've built. With that, I walked away, ignoring the murmurs that followed me. Outside the tent, the evening air felt cleaner somehow. I loosened my tie and took a deep breath, surprised to find I felt more relieved than angry. I was halfway to the valet stand when I heard footsteps hurrying behind me. Mason! Wait! Logan caught up, his wedding attire slightly disheveled and face flushed. Away from guests. His expression held genuine distress. You can't just leave like this. You can't pull that contract. Parker Construction needs that work. Should have thought of that before seating your brother in the kitchen, I replied, continuing toward the parking area. That was Sophia's idea, I tried to tell her. But you didn't stop it, I interrupted, finally turning to face him. You never do, Logan. You've spent your entire life accepting the benefits of being the favorite son, the golden boy. You've watched me be diminished and dismissed, and you've either participated or stood silently by. That's not fair. I didn't. When was the last time you told anyone in that tent what I actually do? When was the last time you corrected someone who dismissed my career as something with computers? Have you ever once acknowledged that Atlas Technologies is valued at over $200 million? That I employ more people than Parker Construction ever has? His silence confirmed what I already knew. You've been struggling for years. I continued more quietly. Parker Construction is barely staying afloat. I know because I pay attention to what's happening with you. Even when you never bother to ask about me. I came here prepared to help you, Logan. And you couldn't even give me a seat at a table. The truth of it seemed to finally penetrate. Logan's shoulders sagged, defensiveness giving way to something that looked like genuine realization. I didn't know about Atlas, about the valuation. You never said? You never asked? I replied simply. Congratulations on your marriage, Logan. I hope it brings you happiness. This time when I walked away, he didn't follow. The following Monday, Atlas Technologies officially announced our selection as primary contractor for the $30 million government infrastructure project. Financial news outlets covered the story, highlighting our innovative approach to integrating software with physical infrastructure management. Our stock price jumped 11% by market close. I buried myself in work, extending my usual 12-hour days to 14, then 16. The Chicago wedding incident, as Rebecca had tactfully begun calling it, faded into the background of contract negotiations, implementation planning, and partnership discussions. A week after the announcement, my assistant intercepted me between meetings. Your mother has called 4 times today, she informed me. She says it's urgent. I sighed, knowing this conversation was inevitable but not looking forward to it. I'll call during lunch. When I finally connected with my mother, her voice carried a mixture of confusion and indignation. Mason, what's happening with Logan's company? He says you canceled some important contract with him? Of course. That would be her interpretation. Not that I had directed business elsewhere, but that I had taken something from Logan. I didn't cancel anything, Mom. Parker Construction was being considered for subcontracting work on a government project Atlas recently secured. We decided to go with more experienced partners. But Logan says you did it because of some silly seating mix-up at the wedding. That doesn't sound like you, Mason. I pinched the bridge of my nose, fighting frustration. The wedding incident simply highlighted larger concerns about professionalism and judgment. Atlas has a responsibility to our shareholders and the government to select the most qualified partners. Well, Logan is very upset. Apparently, they were counting on that work. Your father says the company might have to let people go now. The implied guilt trip was familiar territory. I had long ago accepted that in my family's eyes, I would always bear responsibility for any disappointment Logan experienced. I'm sorry to hear that, I said carefully. Parker Construction's financial planning isn't my responsibility. If they're that dependent on a contract they hadn't even secured yet, they have bigger problems than Atlas's vendor selection process. My mother's sharp intake of breath told me I'd crossed some invisible line of acceptable filial behavior. Mason Parker. That is your brother and father you're talking about. Family helps family. Family also respects family, Mom. Or at least they should. The conversation ended shortly after, with my mother expressing disappointment in my cold business attitude, and me resisting the urge to enumerate the years of dismissal and diminishment I'd experienced. Similar calls followed over the next 2 weeks. My father, an aunt, even a family friend who'd apparently been enlisted to talk sense into me. Each conversation reinforced what I already knew. In my family's narrative, I was now the villain who had chosen corporate interests over blood ties. What none of them mentioned was Logan publicly humiliating me at his wedding. That part of the story had been conveniently edited out in the family retelling. 3 weeks after the wedding, Atlas's board of directors requested a special meeting to discuss the Parker Construction decision. While the board generally didn't involve themselves in subcontractor selection, the family connection and subsequent media attention had raised governance questions. To be clear, said Elaine Woodward, our lead independent director, no one is questioning your authority to make vendor decisions. We're simply concerned about the appearance of personal factors influencing business choices. I nodded, appreciating her directness. The timing was unfortunate, and I take responsibility for that. However, Parker Construction was objectively not the best partner for this project. Their financial statements show declining revenues for 3 consecutive years, and they've never managed a government contract of this scale. The board seemed satisfied with my explanation, though Elaine suggested implementing additional protocols for situations involving potential conflicts of interest. I readily agreed, eager to put the matter behind us. As the meeting concluded, I mentioned one final point. I should disclose that I've offered Parker Construction consultation with our procurement team to help them qualify for future opportunities. This would be standard assistance we provide to any interested vendor. This olive branch had been extended through proper business channels rather than directly to Logan, a way of separating professional opportunity from our personal relationship. Whether Parker Construction would accept the offer remained to be seen. Exactly 1 month after the wedding, Logan appeared unannounced at Atlas's Boston headquarters. My assistant's wide eyes as she ushered him into my office suggested she'd already connected the dots about his identity. Logan stood awkwardly just inside the doorway, taking in the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Boston skyline, the minimalist furniture, and the various industry awards displayed on a side wall. "Nice place," he offered finally. "Thanks. What brings you to Boston?" He shifted uncomfortably, clearly unused to being in a position of supplication. "Can we talk? Really talk, I mean." I gestured to the seating area near the windows, and we settled into the leather chairs. For several moments, Logan just stared out at the view, gathering his thoughts. "I've been an ass," he said finally. "Not just at the wedding. For years." The directness surprised me. Logan had never been one for introspection or admission of fault. "The wedding was Sophia's idea," he continued. "But you were right, I didn't stop it. I should have. And I didn't." "Why not?" I asked simply. He sighed heavily. "Because it was easier not to. Because standing up to Sophia means standing up to her family. And they're bankrolling half our projects now. Because..." He paused, seeming to search for honesty. "Because part of me was still seeing you as my little brother who played with computers, not as this." He gestured around the office. "And that made it okay to seat me in the kitchen?" "No," he admitted. "Nothing makes that okay." A silence stretched between us, filled with decades of complicated history. "Parker Construction is in trouble," Logan finally continued. "Serious trouble. We overextended on the winter's projects. Took on debt we couldn't really handle. The government subcontract would have saved us. That's not how business works, Logan. You don't get contracts because you need them. You get them because you're the best option." He nodded reluctantly. "I know. That's why I'm here. Not to beg for the contract back, I know that ship has sailed. I'm here because I realized something when I saw the news about Atlas." "What's that?" "I've been jealous of you, Mason. For years. Everyone thought I was the successful one taking over Dad's business, marrying into the Winters family. But you were building something real, something bigger than anything I could imagine. And instead of being proud of you, I pretended it wasn't happening." The admission hung in the air between us, surprisingly healing despite its belated delivery. "What does Sophia think of your Boston trip?" I asked. A grimace crossed his face. "We're not exactly on speaking terms right now. After the wedding, when the full story came out about Atlas and your success, her father was furious with me for misrepresenting my connections. Apparently, having a brother who owns Atlas Technologies would have been a major selling point for the Winters family. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. So what happens now?" I asked. "Honestly? I don't know. Parker Construction will probably need to downsize significantly. We might survive in some form, but it won't be what Dad built." "And what about us? You and me?" Logan met my gaze directly for perhaps the first time in years. "That's up to you. I wouldn't blame you if you wanted nothing to do with me after the wedding. But I'd like a chance to I don't know. Start over, maybe? Get to know the brother I apparently never really knew. It wasn't a perfect apology. It didn't erase years of dismissal or the public humiliation of the wedding. But it was something real, perhaps the most honest conversation we'd had as adults. I can't promise anything, Logan. But I'm willing to try. Relief washed over his features. That's more than I deserve. Before he left my office that day, Logan paused at the door. For what it's worth, Mason, I am proud of what you've built. I should have said that years ago. It wasn't everything, but it was a start. 1 year after the infamous wedding kitchen incident, I found myself back in Chicago for Thanksgiving. Not at my parents' house as tradition would normally dictate, but at a neutral location, a private dining room at one of the city's better restaurants. This arrangement had been my suggestion. A way to gather family without the loaded history of our childhood home. Much had changed in 12 months. Atlas Technologies had successfully implemented the government infrastructure project, earning commendations and positioning us for the larger renewal phases. Our valuation had nearly doubled, and we were exploring international expansion opportunities. Parker Construction had undergone significant restructuring. After downsizing to a core team, they had refocused on specialized residential projects rather than competing with larger commercial contractors. The company survived, though in a form very different from what my father had built. Logan and Sophia had separated 3 months after the wedding, their divorce now pending. The Winters family connections had evaporated once Parker Construction's financial troubles became apparent, proving those relationships had always been transactional rather than personal. My brother arrived at the restaurant looking both older and somehow more authentic than I remembered. Gone was the designer suit and carefully cultivated executive appearance. Instead, he wore a simple button-down shirt and slacks, his handshake firm but no longer aggressive when he greeted me. "Thanks for setting this up," he said as we waited for our parents to arrive. "It's better this way." I nodded, sipping my water. "How's the Lakeview project going?" He brightened noticeably. "On schedule and under budget. Turns out focusing on quality custom work for specific clients is more our strength than trying to compete with the big commercial firms." "That makes sense. You always had an eye for detail." Our conversation continued easily, discussing business developments and industry trends without the competitive undercurrent that had previously defined our interactions. When our parents arrived, I noticed my father's surprised expression at finding Logan and me already engaged in comfortable conversation. The dinner progressed more smoothly than any family gathering I could remember. My father, initially reserved, gradually opened up as he realized this new dynamic wasn't threatening but simply different. When he hesitantly asked questions about Atlas's technology, I explained without condescension, and he listened without dismissal. A first in our relationship. My mother, ever the peacekeeper, seemed to relax as the evening progressed, no longer needing to smooth tensions or redirect conversations away from potential conflict areas. At one point, she reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "It's good to have you home, Mason," she said simply. "It's good to be here," I replied, surprised to find I meant it. After dinner, as we waited for the valet to bring our respective cars, Logan stepped closer to me. "I've been meaning to tell you something," he said, uncharacteristic hesitation in his voice. "I've been seeing someone. A therapist, I mean." I raised an eyebrow, genuinely surprised. "That's great, Logan. Yeah, it's been helpful, making me see patterns I didn't recognize before." He paused, gathering courage. "A lot of what happened between us, the competition, my need to always be seen as more successful, the therapist thinks it goes back to how differently Mom and Dad treated us." "You mean how they favored you?" The words came out more sharply than I intended. Logan shook his head. "That's just it. I always thought they favored you." I stared at him, certain I'd misheard. "What?" "You were the smart one, Mason. The one with the natural talents. Nothing came easily to me, not school, not sports even. I had to work twice as hard for half the results. Dad pushed me into construction because he thought it was all I could handle, while you got to go to MIT because you were brilliant. The perspective shift was so unexpected I couldn't immediately process it. But the trophies, the parties, the constant praise. Overcompensation, Logan said quietly. At least that's what my therapist suggests. They knew you'd succeed no matter what. They weren't sure about me. We stood in silence as the valet brought his car around. I'm not saying this excuses anything I did, Logan added. Just that I'm beginning to understand why I was so threatened by you. Your success felt like confirmation of what I always feared, that you were the truly gifted one. As I watched him drive away, I considered how differently we had experienced the same childhood, each believing the other was favored. The realization was both unsettling and strangely healing, a reminder that our perceptions shape our realities in ways we rarely examine. Back in my hotel room that night, I reflected on the journey of the past year. The wedding kitchen incident, painful as it had been, had catalyzed something necessary. It had forced a confrontation with patterns established decades earlier and perpetuated through mutual misunderstanding. In the business world, I had always prided myself on clear communication and transparent relationships. Yet in my family life, I had accepted opacity and assumption, never directly addressing the dynamics that caused such pain. The transformation wasn't complete, of course. One dinner couldn't erase years of complicated history. My father still occasionally slipped into old patterns of dismissing my work as abstract and intangible compared to Logan's real construction business. My mother still sometimes mediated conversations that adults should be able to navigate directly. But something fundamental had shifted. We were seeing each other more clearly, not as the roles we had assigned one another in the family narrative, but as the complex individuals we had become. 2 weeks after Thanksgiving, I received an unexpected email from Logan with the subject line, "Partnership idea." He proposed a limited collaboration between our companies using Atlas technology to enhance Parker Construction's project management for their specialized residential work. Not a charity arrangement, but a genuine business opportunity that could benefit both companies. I forwarded the proposal to our partnership team with a note requesting thorough but fair evaluation. When they recommended proceeding with a pilot program, I felt a satisfaction deeper than any major contract signing had provided. This wasn't about the money, it was about building something constructive from the rubble of our former relationship. The kitchen incident at Logan's wedding had initially seemed like the final breaking point in a lifelong pattern of dismissal and disrespect. Instead, it had become the foundation for something I hadn't dared hope for: authentic connection based on mutual respect rather than obligation or competition. I had learned that standing up for myself didn't have to mean cutting ties permanently. That setting boundaries could actually create space for healthier relationships. That sometimes the most painful moments can catalyze the most necessary changes. Most importantly, I had learned that real success isn't measured by contracts or valuations or who gets seated at which table. It's measured by the courage to be authentic even when it's uncomfortable. By the wisdom to know when to walk away and when to offer second chances. By the strength to build relationships based on who people are now rather than who they once were. The journey from kitchen table to reconciliation hadn't been easy or straightforward. It had required honesty, vulnerability, and the willingness to see family members as flawed humans rather than villains or heroes in my personal narrative. As I signed the official partnership agreement between Atlas Technologies and Parker Construction, I thought about how far we had come from that wedding day. The document represented more than a business arrangement, it was tangible evidence that painful patterns could be broken, that new foundations could be built. Family relationships are complicated. They're loaded with history, expectation, and the peculiar pain that comes from being truly known yet somehow not seen. The journey to authentic connection rarely follows a straight line. Sometimes it requires a kitchen table moment, a breaking point that forces everything into painful clarity. But that clarity, painful as it may be, creates possibility. The possibility of being truly seen, of boundaries respected, of relationships based on who we are rather than who others need us to be. Have you ever experienced a moment where standing up for yourself changed everything? Where setting a boundary actually created the possibility for a better relationship? Share your story in the comments below. And if you found value in my journey from kitchen table to reconciliation, please like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who might need to hear it. Thank you for listening, and remember, sometimes the most painful moments lead to the most necessary growth.